Welcome back to the channel. I'm Davey, and I've just finished a wonderful interview with Ramsey Sheep. Ramsey is the latest employee for NLT Media. He is an animator, and he speaks about how he got into the career, his career, what he's worked on in the past, all of the kid shows at Nickelodeon, Disney, and then the impacts of COVID, how the writer's strike impacted the animator industry, how AI is going to be taking over the industry as well, and his advice for people who want to get into animation themselves, plus many, many more topics, including the story how Ramsey Sheep wanted to be a pro wrestler. It's a great interview. I hope you guys enjoy it, and thank you once again to Ramsey Sheep for joining me. Now, let's roll the interview. Thank you for coming on. I don't know if I asked you that in the preamble. Anyway, for the audience, do you mind just introducing yourself? Who you are? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm Ramsey Sheep. Totally my real name. And I'm an animator. Right now I'm working on NLT's game Symphony of the Serpent. And before that, lots of other stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into.
We will, yes. I have notes that I actually had to take. I want to go back before we get into the whole NLT stuff, which is why a lot of the audience will be here. We will get to it. Don't worry. I'll ask all the juicy questions. What inspired you to get into animation? Like when did that start? Where did that come from?
It was a very odd route that led me to animation because when I was in my teens, I was always drawing, but I didn't think of that as a career. It was just something I liked to do. But music was sort of my number one thing. So I was in a band from when I was like 13 and just kind of stayed that way until college. And at the same time, I was doing pro wrestling, which was my other major passion, which was sort of what I actually wanted to do as a career. I kept thinking like, I can be the guy who's like in a band touring and also wrestling and doing all that. But then when I was 17, I broke my neck. So
Oh,
that kind of
wow.
put the end to the wrestling dream because I was never really able to go full blast with that again. And when it was time for me to go to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do because neither music nor wrestling was really a career. It was sort of just passions. And so I at first just did fine arts because at least that was something I was like, okay, I draw all the time. I might as well just do this. But while I was doing it, there was no career path for this. Like even when you're in it, they tell you like, oh, you could be a curator at a museum or an art teacher. And I was like, none of this sounds good. This all sounds like a nightmare that I'm just going to have to accept. And so I dropped out of fine arts and just went back on tour with my band for a year. And then just by sheer luck, because I wasn't doing well, I was sort of doing the rock star lifestyle of like lots of drugs and, not taking care of myself well. And one of my uncles was sort of noticing that I was struggling. And he lived in another province as well. But he was like, there's a college here that has a few art programs. Why don't you just like come down for a visit and I'll take you to the college and you can just look around and see if something is cool. And when I got there, I saw it was just like a pamphlet for the animation program. And I was like, well, that's like, I get to draw and there's actually a career from this. There's a specific job I will be able to do. And so I was like, okay, fuck it, let's go. And I packed up one backpack and I just moved to another province and stayed with my aunt and uncle while I went to college, and I became like completely obsessed. I was, you know, every second of the day I was working on my animation projects. So I went from like, failing every course in fine arts to being like the top of my class in everything in the animation program. And so I never stopped after that. Like once I got into it and I realized like this is what I was supposed to do and I just happened to find it like falling ass backwards into exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And so yeah, I never stopped. And I found work straight out of college. Actually, I didn't do my last year because the biggest studio in Canada offered me a job. So I was like, threw all my school supplies away, ran to the studio, and then, yeah, been working ever since.
There's a lot to unpack there. I was a little bit speechless. You broke your neck. Can we get to how you broke your neck?
I'm not a small guy for the average person, but I'm small for a pro wrestler because I'm only like 6 feet tall and like 200 and something pounds. And I was wrestling against a guy who was like juiced off his fucking tits. He was so big. Because he was like 6'5" and like 350 and just had abs at that size and big roid veins in his neck. And I hated wrestling him, and he didn't like me because I was like the kid who was sort of like starting to get popular. And he sort of had that impression that I hadn't paid my dues. So he was very stiff in the ring with me. Like he'd beat the shit out of me. And one match, he put me up on his shoulders to do a power bomb off the second rope. And when he did it, like he pulled down so aggressively that I didn't land flat. I like went way over rotated and landed on the back of my head. And so I completely blew out one of the discs in my neck. Like it's still like that's gone. Like it's not there. And there was just fractures all over two of my vertebrae. And so yeah, that was a long healing process.
That is wild. Wild. How did you like growing up? I know a lot of kids, even over in the UK, we watched the WWE, WWF when it was, and
Mhm.
all of that, and now it's what CNW. I can't remember what the other one's called. AEW,
Oh yeah,
AEW.
yeah.
Everyone
AEW, yeah.
watches that. Is that literally just you as a kid watching that and then playing around with friends, and you were like, one day I'm gonna give this a go, or
Oh yeah, it was I don't remember starting to watch wrestling. It was just one of those things that like I had always been doing it. So probably, 2 or 3 years old before I could remember. It's just it was the thing that would come on Saturday and I would just watch it. And yeah, I used to like I had an older brother, so we would just body slam each other in the backyard and stuff. And yeah, I always wanted to do it, and then I found out that there was a like local promotion that was actually like where they put on their events was in a series of like hockey arenas around where I lived, and so I would just start showing up, and like even though at the time I was like 13, I would just go into the events and I would start talking to everybody, and like I started just asking around, like, if I wanted to get into this one day, like, who would I talk to and stuff. And so I met the promoter, who was a very terrifying person because he was like a big biker and he was like super aggressive and like kind of scary for a kid. But he kept telling me to fuck off for the first year. But I was so passionate about it that a lot of the wrestlers were more accepting, and so a lot of them would start showing me, the ins and outs of like how this actually works. Because as much as I knew that like wrestling wasn't a real fight, I didn't really understand the mechanics of how to actually like do this. So I had a bunch of guys that were showing me stuff, and then there was the lead trainer who was a British guy, and he was like an older guy, but because I was so passionate, he took me in and like showed me in one sort of like class. Like he had me in with a bunch of the other younger wrestlers, and he just beat the shit out of me for like an hour, and then made me work out to the point where I was like throwing up in a bucket. And he tried to break me to see if I actually wanted to do this or not. And I showed up the next day and I was like, more, please. And so after a week of him just running me just completely ragged, he was finally like, okay, show up to the class every time you want when we're having one. Like, I'll keep training you until, the promoter says that he'll throw you in there. And so it was like 6 months of just ultra intense, like the workouts he had us doing were mind-boggling. Where it was like 1,000 body weight squats and like 100 push-ups and then however many sit-ups. It was essentially until you blacked out. And then after all that, you'd get beaten up by other wrestlers for another hour, and then they'd send you home. So 6 months of that, and he finally like sort of nudged the promoter, and he's like, put the kid in with one of the guys and just you know, let him feel what it's like out there, So he either keeps coming back or he finally leaves us alone. And so, yeah, I got my first match after about 6 months, and I kept doing it for about 4 years until I got injured.
What was the feeling like for your first match? Like walking out with I mean, guess there was a crowd. I don't know how big the crowd was, but even if there was like 5 people in the crowd, I'd be so nervous.
So I was nervous, but I at that point I had already performed with my band on stages. So I had already sort of discovered that I don't have stage fright ever. Like I'm not whether there's one person in the audience or 1,000 people in the audience, it doesn't make any difference. The nerves I felt for wrestling was much more like don't fuck up because it wasn't about the crowd. It was about not wanting to embarrass myself as a wrestler.
Right, yeah. So it's if in a weird way, it's a team sport, right? Because it is a show. So
Oh
if
yeah.
you mess up, you also mess up the other guy's routine, and
Yeah.
yeah, you just don't want to let other people down, right? So yeah, I totally get that from that point of view. Sorry, you said so much in that first bit. I was like kind of mind blown. It's very good, and I was like, wow. Back to the animation. You obviously found your passion, and you clearly have that drive, which a lot of people have in the creative spaces, be it music, be it whatever it is. You have that almost obsessive drive to just do it and get better at it. Um, did you always have that as a kid? Is that where you think you got that from music, or is that just something that you've always had? Like, I don't know, going outside and playing basketball, you became obsessed with it for a little bit, and then you dropped it and moved on to something else.
I think it was very much that a lot of things I wouldn't focus, I didn't care, but I would get these couple of things every once in a while where I'd find it and be like, "Oh, I love this." And then I would get obsessed and just start doing it, until I couldn't anymore. And that was mostly like a couple of physical type things, so like martial arts and wrestling, like that got me with that thing where I was just like I have to do this. Music was like that too, and then animation was like that too. And animation more so than drawing, because drawing I like it, but I don't get quite as obsessed as like making things move.
Yeah, I saw some of your commissions on Twitter, and they're really impressive and they're very unique. I'll share some pics if you're happy for me to do
Oh yeah.
so on the video. So career path, we already spoke about the school path of it. Really, you just found a course in college and that was it. You didn't have to go in with any. I suppose you got a little bit of art behind you, but there was no you need to be good at computers or anything like that before the college would accept you. Just basic skills
Uh,
or
so there was a drawing portfolio that you had to have to get in, and so I had tons of drawings. They weren't necessarily very good, but there was so much of them that they put me in the program, and it was very much a sink or swim type program where the workload and demand is incredibly high. So the burnout and dropout rate is severe because, and also the reason I didn't need any computer skills was because I wasn't in computer animation. I wasn't doing 3D. I was doing hand drawn animation on paper. Uh, yeah. And then in the last year of the program, they introduce you to 2D computer animation just because that's what all the jobs were in, besides 3D. So they taught us that a little bit, and that's what I did for almost my entire career. I only did one show in 3D, and that was the last one I did before uh, starting to work with NLT.
I just a weird personal note. I done media, which covers many different things in British schools. If anyone's from the UK and they go to British schools, they'll understand what BTEC media is. We done a little bit of claymation and like stop motion, mainly inspired by like Wallace and Gromit and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And we done like I'm terrible at art. I can't draw to save my life, but I really enjoyed the process. Was it the process that got you hooked into it, or was it you being able to, I don't know, see the final results and see what you can make and going up? Because once you do something once, you then nitpick at your own work and you're like, I can do that better next time. Is it that what kept, I don't know, driving you forward?
I think that's probably what kept me in it for so many years. But I know what what hooked me in college was the first time that I was flipping through my pages of drawings because we had to just do like the first assignments were very rudimentary of like doing a bouncing ball. And the way that we would do our quick tests when we were do like to see the motion is you'd put the papers between each of your fingers and then you would develop a technique of like rolling your fingers forward and backward while looking down into the pages and that would sort of like let you see the motion happening. That was the first thing. The first time I had like 3 or 4 drawings between my fingers and I was just rolling them back and forth and watching it move, I was like, "Oh my God." And yeah, I got so obsessed with the idea of like just with my pencil on a piece of paper, I can create things that look like they're alive, even though like there's no motion in this. Like the motion is like a trick in your head because like these are just still images, but like if you work on it well enough, you can like trick people into thinking that your pencil lines are alive. And that was wild to me. And I loved that idea.
That is really cool. You spoke about that you got signed up by a Canadian company or the major Canadian company. What was your first like actual project that you ever worked on that then went and made it to like a TV screen or a film screen or whatever it was?
So the first show was it was actually a remake of a Canadian classic from like the 60s. It was called Gerald McBoing Boing, which is a very silly show.
Sounds funny.
Yeah, it's like a little kid who can't talk, but he can make perfect imitations of sound effects of anything. The show is very much like a preschool, like very little kid show, and it was a good one to start on, even though like I would never watch the show. Like I've seen episodes afterwards, and I was like, well, it was cool that I worked on that, but like it wasn't a huge show. It wasn't on like major international networks and stuff like that. It was just a small Canadian show, but that was my start. And that was a good time for me to learn because there wasn't as much pressure because it was such a small show. So we had a lot more freedom to sort of like play around with the style and sort of make it our own.
How big was the team of people you were working with?
So as far as animators goes at that point, because that studio was, even though it's like the biggest studio in Canada right now, it was fairly small at the time. And as far as animators go, there was maybe like 20.
Oh, it's like a nice small group,
Yeah,
almost like a family in that sense.
yeah. We back then it was very much like I knew the owner of the studio. We would like joke around and hang out during the day. It was like very small, very tight knit team. Which at this point I think they have like 500 people in that studio.
Yeah, it's crazy how it
Yeah.
grows.
Oh yeah.
So from there, you went on to where? Where did you go from there?
Well, I stayed at that studio for 8 years. Um, so as I was there, every single production got bigger because like the studio started to explode. And so like the first year was Canadian content, and then the next year was like American like big, bigger name studio type stuff. Like we did stuff for Warner Brothers. That was one of the first big ones, and like we did one for National Geographic. Yeah, and then shortly after, things kind of started to roll a lot quicker because we got our first Disney contract, and on that one, I wasn't just one of the animators; I was one of the 2 lead animators. Because the creator of the show, when we were doing our test animation in the beginning, he pointed to my scenes and he was like, "That's what I want the show to look like." And so because of that, the director was like, "Okay, you're one of the leads, like you're going to show everybody else how to do it the way that you're doing it." And so that was like my first big break where it was like all of a sudden everyone was looking at me instead of me just being sort of one of the young animators.
That must have been such a great moment to to be pointed out by especially a Disney like employee, right? Just be looked at and being yeah, that must have been crazy. Do you have a favorite that you've worked on? Like a favorite show? Is there a favorite moment from a show that you're like, I'm so proud of that one?
Oh boy, I worked on a lot.
It's always a hard question, eh?
Yeah, I got into another show much later, which is another like big one, but it was a Nickelodeon show, which was The Loud House. And on that one, I was one of the leads as well for the first season, because I was one of the supervisors, but I was also like, so I had my own team, and I was sort of like teaching them all this style, and like, so I had a very big impact on that show. So that's probably like the show that I did the most specific stuff on, because I mean, I worked on that show for 4 seasons. So that was like a big chunk of my career was working on that.
Yeah, that's a it's proud, right? That's like your baby in a sense, especially if you know that you started it from like season one. Is it hard to come into a project like halfway through, like third season and try and pick it up, or is it easier to start from the start and build it up yourself from scratch?
I don't know that one is harder than the other. It's just a very different thing because if you start at the beginning, no one knows exactly what it's supposed to look like. So if you're one of the sort of senior animators or one of the lead animators, you have a lot of input on what it's probably going to end up looking like, because when you do a lot of the test in the first episode, the client will start to point at scenes and be like, we like this, we don't like this one so much, so like maybe, aim towards this and that kind of stuff. If you jump in the middle of a season where everything's very established, there is no more like playing around and trying to figure out exactly what you want to do. So it's easier in the sense that there's a lot of reference to look at, because it's like that's exactly what it's supposed to look like. You can watch this and you know exactly what's supposed to happen. And they'll have sheets where like they have rules for things already established and written down, and like guides for style. So it's both easier in the sense that you don't have to guess, but it's harder because now there's a very specific thing that you have to aim for. But that's not like that would be very I think that would be very hard if you're early in your career and then all of a sudden you have to match this style perfectly. But once you've been doing it a while, it's so much easier because like the reference is all there. So like you know what to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any advice for people who want to get into that industry now?
Don't do it, unfortunately.
I have a question for later on. I'm going to guess that'll be why. But what was the last show that you worked on before the move to NLT?
So I worked on a 3D show called Dino Ranch, which is like a preschool. Think of like a Paw Patrol, but with dinosaurs, except animated much, much better.
What was your? So you said it was your only 3D experience. Did you enjoy the 3D like learning side of it, or were you?
No, no. The whole thing was a miserable nightmare because this was still towards the end of the pandemic. So I was uh, I was having to learn an entirely new software with no direct guidance, because they looked at my. I mean, this is for the same studio that I did 2D work for. It was just they were like, we need to take some of our 2D guys and train them in 3D because you'll take a lot of the skills you have of this like exaggerated cartoony animation, and then you can bring it over to 3D, and like we'll uh, sort of bring up the level of all that across the board by bringing these people in. But I was at home alone with little to no guidance. And because it was like, oh, he's a 17-year veteran, he doesn't need anybody to hold his hand. But it's like I had never touched 3D software before. And the process is so different. It's like, it's not even comparable to how you do it in 2D. And so, yeah, it was 2 or 3 months of just like extreme frustration and like, suffering until they finally noticed that I didn't know anything. And they were like, "How come you don't have like a lead who's showing you what to do?" And I'm like, "Yes. Why don't I have somebody showing me what to do?" So it got a little easier after that, but I didn't really enjoy that process very much. I could see the potential in it. It's just that my process in it was like not good. But through that year working on that, of like just working my ass off to try to figure it out, I did figure a lot of it out. So I still had those skills that I had developed, even though it was like an unpleasant process. But then, right when I was starting to get it, that's when the animation industry imploded. And It's still not fully recovered, but I mean, it went from everything's booming. There's, even through the pandemic, work was like animation industry was one of the few things that was not affected by the pandemic. If anything, productivity increased because all of a sudden you didn't have to get all these socially awkward introverted people to leave their houses and go to the studio. They switched to everyone working from home and everybody was doing great. And so that was like booming. Everything was crazy. But then a combination of things of the writer strike that happened and a lot of the pre-production elements being disrupted during the pandemic. So by the time the pandemic seemed to be like, not such a big deal for like global health, was exactly when the animation industry crumbled because all that pre-production not happening and all the writer strikes and all the actor strikes, all of that caught up towards the end. And then something like no one knows the exact number, but something like 60 to 80% of the animation workforce was laid off within like a 3-month period. And so I was included in that. And it went on a series of like 6 months where I was applying everywhere, but like no one had work. Everyone was unemployed. And like it was a nightmare for the animators. Like everything had fallen apart. And so like yeah, the rug was just pulled out from under everyone's feet without any warning because nobody knew this was coming except for like sort of people deep inside the production layer of the business. But among the artists, none of us knew that this was coming. So to suddenly have it be where you have, I think, 30,000 unemployed animators all vying for the same like 5 jobs that are left, it became a nightmare where everybody was out of work and people were like not able to pay their bills and having to leave the animation industry forever to try to refocus on something else. Like it was crushing to that industry. I don't know if it actually will recover.
No, I was going to ask this question later, but I'll ask it now. What are your thoughts on the cartoon and animation industry, and do you think AI art will have a big effect on the industry going forward? And what are your thoughts on AI art? I know that's a lot to chew on, but I feel like you might be the person to ask that question too.
Yeah, and as far as it goes with animation, um, it it's not there yet where it's actively taking away anybody's job because like I've seen what AI animation looks like and it's not up to the standards of what like Nickelodeon and Disney and Warner Brothers like what they're putting out. AI can't do that yet. Where it is more of a danger currently is for the writers that are involved in animation because AI can do that, unfortunately. Like it can write scripts way faster and probably to a comparable quality to what the writers are really putting out because it's not like they're doing their best work on children's animation, right? Like it's,
Yeah,
one
it's a
guy
kid
says,
show, yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, one guy says wuggity wuggity and the other kids laugh and they all run away. It's like a computer can do that too. Uh, I mean, 10 years from now, guaranteed the AI will be able to do anything that you can get a person to do. Which is why every time somebody asks me about like people who are thinking about going into animation, it's like this is not the time to do that because you won't have a job when you get out of college. Because there aren't jobs now. So it's like this is not the industry to go into anymore.
Is there a role in the industry that's not animation, but maybe alongside it or around it that you could see people getting jobs in with, I don't know, like overseeing projects, or is there anything that way?
I think because of the guilds, I think acting is one of the ones that you could still do, like if you get into voice acting, because their guilds are protecting their positions. But among animators, for the most part, there aren't guilds. Like they have a little bit of union type stuff in the US, but in Canada there's none and the industry won't allow it. So like I don't know how it is across the world, like which countries have it and which don't, but I know a lot of them don't. So yeah, outside of voice acting for animation, like I don't know what paths in that industry are really going to be open to people for very much longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's get to the topic which a lot of people will be here. My channel is adult games content.
Mhm.
How did you come to discover or get in contact with NLT? How did that come about?
So if you remember earlier how I said how I got into animation in the first place, where it was almost like I fell ass backwards into a successful avenue.
Yeah.
This was almost exactly the
I
same.
do remember your name popping up in chat once in the Discord saying, "Hey, can I speak to NLT?" And I think
Yeah.
Billy Cakes took you to the
Yes.
DMs for a conversation. Is that literally it?
Yes.
That's
That
amazing.
is that is literally what happened. I had somebody on Twitter who was not even somebody I know. They were like the thing is my wife has like a pretty active community, right? Because
Yeah, when you're close to 60,000 followers on Twitch, you are doing rather well.
yeah, so they've talked about the fact that I had been out of work for so long because it was like putting major stress on the family, right? Like me not being able to like do my career and make a living.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I was trying to get by with doing commissions, but like there's not enough demand for that type of work to actually like make a living doing it. So people would just sort of like here and there, like people in her community would just send me a DM and be like, "Hey, I heard of this thing that's hiring," but almost always it was like something that I was not qualified to do because it might be like things where you need to know coding because it has to do like with integrating things into video games and like there's all kinds of stuff and like anime style things which I'm like this is not what I do, like they're not going to hire me.
Yeah.
And then one guy just happened to mention NLT where they're like, I heard that he's looking for an animator, and I was like, well, I mean, it's animation, like it's for video games, but I don't have to do like stuff that is actually actively used, in the game engine. It's like I'm doing cutscenes. That's what I would be doing. So I was like, that is animation. Like I could be qualified for this. And so I just hopped into the Discord and just like, eh, like tried to see if I could talk to him. And then I did, and I showed him my demo reel with, my nearly 20 years of animation. And even though it was not the style of these games at all, right? Like it was cartoons. I don't know. He must have seen something because he was like excited by the idea. So he was like, "Yeah, why not? Let's give it a try." And even though I'd never used the software before, so it was another like, "Oh God, I gotta scramble and learn this." But luckily, NLT is not like working for some big giant corporate studio where like they're not really paying attention to you. It was like it's him and it's me, and if I ask him a question, he helps me. And so I was able to learn it way faster than learning the 3D software I'd been using before.
Yeah, I haven't spoke publicly about it, but I'm also doing some stuff for NLT, which I spoke to you previously before, and
Mhm.
he is the most approachable person. It's a little bit weird for me because obviously he wakes up midday US
Yeah.
time, and it's
Yeah.
it's like 6 o'clock in the evening in my head. But like, you ask him a question, you get a reply.
Hmm.
I asked him about some work, and he was like, "Yeah, give me 45 minutes. I'll give you a 2-hour tutorial on Discord. You can record it so you can watch it back. Any more questions? Just ask me." He's so easy to work for,
Oh
and
yeah. It's
yeah,
it's been yeah, it's been one of the most straightforward experiences I've ever had working where it's like I know that I'm working for him and not anybody else. It's just like he is the guy. I don't have to go to anybody else to like figure things out and seek approval. Like I talk to him and he explains stuff. If I need help, he goes on a call and he shows me how to do stuff. Which there was a lot more of that previously. Now it's sort of like he just says like, "Oh, just do some of this," and I'll be like, "Okay, I'll just do that." But in the beginning to learn this, he would literally go on calls for hours just showing
yeah,
me the way that the software worked, and it was amazing.
yeah. He's a great teacher. I will vouch for that. You've done obviously quite a lot in the games so far. The tennis scene and the latest
Oh,
update for the Grandmasters, you done a lot of that, I believe.
so he set the scenes up for me and sort of put in the uh, like the characters and all their positions and everything, and then yeah, I animated that.
That is probably one of the most impressive scenes we've seen in an LT. Have you played any of the games? Yeah, I don't know if you've been able to
So
go have a peek at some of them.
I feel guilty about this because I know that these games are amazing, but like I don't have the time to get through them because like I don't have a lot of free time.
Oh, 100%.
So I downloaded I downloaded it and I started to play, but I was like, oh, I keep running out of time before I get anything done. And then the new update comes out and I'm like, uh-oh. What's funny is you've seen something that I haven't seen. I actually haven't seen the tennis scene fully rendered out. They never got that far into the game. So I only saw it as like raw animation.
Oh yeah, I've seen the whole thing now. So yeah, and all of the Grandmaster tier patrons have also seen it, and everything else. If you're not a Grandmaster tier patron, spoilers. There's a tennis match coming up. I think you'd have worked that one out from the trailer and the fact that there's a character that has a tennis racket in her hand. Anyway,
Mhm.
so you've gone from working on kids shows to the adult industry. I've seen some of your tweets where you've made some, some fun jokes about should I make an alt count on Twitter and other little bits like that. I'm googling sexual oral positions for work. Never thought I'd be doing stuff like that. That's a fun
Yeah.
tweet. What was it like breaking the news? I don't know how much you've broken the news to your friends and family. I know NLT himself says he speaks very little of what he does to his family.
Right.
Did you? I'm gonna guess you had a conversation with your wife.
Oh, they were fine. Like when I said what I'd be doing, they were like, all right, that sure.
Yeah, work.
Like they had no problem at all. Well, yeah, they were like, "You're gonna animate for a thing." It's like this is gonna be interesting when I come by your computer to see what you're doing. But like, my wife is as open to like all this kind of stuff as you could possibly be. Like they were not bothered by this. Explaining to my children why they can't walk into my office was a little different because with my oldest it doesn't matter. He's 18. Like he just asks me like very blunt like questions about what I do and I'll just answer. My teen, I'm just like I explained what I do and I'm like and that's why you can't come into the office without knocking. And then with my two youngest, I'm like, you don't go into my office ever. Like, not while I'm working.
Yeah. The birds and the bees conversation is for later in life in that one.
Yeah. And with the rest of my family, I mean, as much as the family that I actually like talk to on a regular basis, like I told my parents what I'm doing. I was like, eh. And yeah, my parents were like, well, that's weird, but you do what you got to do to support your family. And I was like, yep. So
Exactly.
yeah,
It's a job in the industry. It pays the bills, and you get to do what you've learnt to love as a craft, I suppose, and that's what
yeah,
the main things are. I suppose that's what matters. All that. If you're gonna go play any game, I love all of the games. I played all the games. I discovered them in lockdown. That's why I'm
mhm.
here. Started YouTube and all that. To be honest, go play Treasure and Nadia. It's the one that all of the people will always recommend. Um,
Yeah. I've So because the older games are different, I was able to go through those ones without like actually playing through the game. I was able to just like watch the cutscenes and that kind of stuff
oh, perfect. Yeah.
because I needed to have enough reference for what I'm supposed to make this stuff look like. Because in the beginning, I was making things much more like actual realistic motion, which is not what you want for these types of games. You want it to be like loose and kind of a little bit more floppy than people normally are in real life. Well, during the sex scenes, not during
Yes.
acting. That's relatively straightforward. But yeah, so I looked at the older stuff as reference to know what to do, and yeah, the fact that he was able to do all that stuff by himself before he hired me is astounding to me.
It's I don't want to harp on about it too much, but the adult gaming industry has a lot of developers, and a lot of them don't put out content anywhere near the rate that NLT does it. And the fact that he built Lost Epidemic while working a full-time job, quit his job, and then done Treasure and Adia 2 updates a month on his own back with very little support. It's wild to me. I know he started to build out a team, and he has goals and ideas of really being somewhere in 5 to 10 years time and not having to work the crazy hours that he does. But yeah,
Hmm.
his work ethic is is stunning, and it's a real like shining light for the whole of the industry, really, because you just don't get it. I'm sure you've seen many people come along your line of work, and you're like they're just not going to put in the work, and they're not going to put in the graft to get where you need to get.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, the amount of animators I saw who at work while sitting at their desk would be just like watching a movie, and I'd go by and I'd be like, "What? Like you are at work right now. Like you should be focused and doing what you're supposed to do. Like this is not how you succeed. Like, this is a hard industry. You got to work your ass off. And yeah, like that is the mentality that some people in artistic industries have, where it's almost like they treat it like a game instead of a career. And like I never did. I was always like, if I don't work hard and improve, like I'm not gonna have a job. Like,
Yeah, that's which is the right mentality to have. Talking of gaming, you said in a little chat on Discord that you do a lot of gaming. What sort of games are you playing at the moment?
so besides Minecraft, which is the thing I always go back to, but that's also because I'm creating a giant map for a like SMP game that's going to be run where it's like all these VTubers and stuff who are all going to be playing characters. So besides that, which Minecraft is always my thing, I play like some. Well, I have a weird assembly of games that I like to play because I don't play a lot of new games. I tend to play the same few games, but they're games that you can play a lot, like for a very long time. So one, just because I love it, is every time UFC releases a game, I like that's always sort of in the rotation. Where like when I feel like punching a man in the face, I play that one. But then like I've been playing the Civilization games since they came out, the
Oh my
Total
god,
War
that's so
games.
good. I could talk Civ all day long. What are your thoughts on the new Civ?
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah. It could be amazing, the changes they're making, or it could unbalance things, but I trust them enough that like it's probably gonna work.
Yeah. As an animator, did you look at some of the new animations? Because some people are like, oh, I don't like the look of the new leaders.
They've been doing this for a while where they're like, because if you looked at 4, they were
Yes.
trying to go towards realism, just they didn't have the tech to get there yet. But then in 5 and then into 6, it's like they went more cartoony with them.
Yes.
And so they seem to sort of just be going along the same path they have been of like make them cartoony, make them almost like a caricature of what that person looked like, possibly. And so I mean, I never had any problem with them exploring different styles.
Yeah. Sorry, you were rambling about other games. Total War.
Yeah, the Total War series I've played since the second one, so that was 25 years ago or something like that.
A long
Uh,
time.
oh yeah, and then I also really love the Mount and Blade series.
I have no idea what that is.
So from the tactical map, it looks a lot like a Total War game, and so you control yourself and your army and move them around, but you're only like the one force, and you can go to different cities, and there's things to do there. Where like there's like tournaments you can participate in, you can do trading, so selling for profit in another city. But then like when you go down to the battlefield, you issue commands to your troops, but you are your character, so you're a guy sitting on a horse with a weapon in your hand.
Oh, that's
So
sweet.
yeah, so it switches to all of a sudden it's like you are now riding around a battlefield with like hundreds of people, you know, going to war. So those games, I've always loved that aspect of it, of just like once the battle starts and it's like now you're down here with the rest of them instead of like floating above like a god, just pointing people in directions.
You're a bit of a history buff as well. Do you like your
Yes, sure.
history? Yeah.
Yeah, especially ancient history. Uh, and then kind of up to the Second World War and everything after that, I'm kind of like, eh.
So is the Greek mythology in Symphony of the Serpent scratching an itch a little bit as well?
Yeah, so the funny thing is NLT doesn't tell me anything about the story ahead of time, right? Like he doesn't sort of.
Oh, me too. I don't get. Yeah, yeah. I'm not in the Lore Guardian group, so I don't get to know that, or I'm not in the story group, so yeah.
Yeah, but what was funny is he would uh he would send me a sequence and there would just be names of characters and I'd be like, is this that, like, are you just using the name or is this the person from mythology? Like, and he was like, oh, you noticed that, did you? And I was like, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, there is a name that we can't reveal yet, but yes, I know
Yeah.
what you're on about. Yeah, because he accidentally dropped that in beta test as well. I was like, you just dropped that in beta test. He's like, oh, damn it.
Well, they'll either notice or they won't.
It's in the trailer, so people should be able to work it out. You said about Minecraft, you're building, so you're building an SMP for VTubers. That sounds
Yeah.
like a big project build.
Oh yeah. Like it's so I'm building these like lore locations because the map was one that we purchased. So it's just to not be just a random map. It's sort of like the terrain is sculpted in a way that makes sense instead of having like like things floating in the air every once in a while. So we did that, and then I've spent months just like building giant underground like lore locations and like yeah, and like building a giant shattered nether portal that is going to be there and all kinds of wacky stuff. Once the game starts, I'm going to be making even more changes because the players are supposed to watch the world change.
Oh, that's really cool. I'm a massive Minecraft fan. I've been playing it since like the alpha, and I remember the days of
Yeah.
watching EFO and the different SMPs that come and go, like Hermitcraft and Minecraft. So, yeah,
Yeah.
watching Minecraft stuff like that is always really exciting to me, and I always
Hmm.
really enjoy it. And every now and then I go get the itch to go play it for like a month, burn myself out, and then don't play it for 6 months. But that's
Yeah.
normally the way it is. I've got my own private server for my Twitch community, so I completely understand
Hmm.
that. Yeah. We didn't touch on your music too much. I did have a little scroll for your Twitter, and I saw some pics. I'm gonna guess I know what way this music genre is gonna go.
When you say pics, do you mean just what I look like?
Yeah, yeah. I scrolled. I think like a good while. Yeah, like you had like how you used to dress and like how you dress
Oh yeah,
now,
yeah.
and I in my head I'm like, oh, he's a rocker and he lived the rock and roll lifestyle. So even before you said what you said earlier about the rock and roll lifestyle and drugs and all of the parties and the alcohol, did you do? I don't know. Did you have albums or CDs or where did you
Yeah,
go with that?
we made three of them when I was with the band. They're still technically going, like they never fully broke up when I left. But yeah, we did three albums. They weren't really like we weren't part of a record label, so they weren't really like produced and distributed wildly. It was just like we would sell them at shows, and then we put them online so people could like either purchase the full album or just like listen to you know example songs and stuff. But yeah, we were a very our style was sort of black metal mixed with some electronic elements and other things.
Who are your music inspirations?
So because I didn't write a lot of the music, I didn't have that much input into that. Like I was doing the rhythm guitar and vocals. So from the vocal standpoint, I had a lot of control over that. But as far as like the actual music, like the keyboards and the arrangements and everything, I didn't write any of that. I would sometimes like add in a couple licks here and there. But at the time, the bands that I was really into were actually almost entirely European bands. I liked like one of my favorite bands, and they still are, is Cradle of Filth, which is a UK extreme metal
I've heard
band.
them. I haven't listened, but I have heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cradle of Filth was a big inspiration, but not for my vocal style because he's very, very high pitched. Like he's got this super high pitched screech. But something more like Dimmu Borgir and some of the other like Norwegian black metal bands. That's where a lot of my vocal style back then came from.
Can you still do the growl? I'm not going to ask you to do it, but can you still growl, or is your vocal cords ruined like many great artists
Oh
are
no,
nowadays?
I didn't really take any damage
Oh, you're
because I
fine.
yeah I did it with the proper technique because I figured out how to make that growl without actually screaming, which is how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah,
So yeah, I didn't really damage my voice.
yeah. I grew up listening to a lot of Billy Talent, so that's my
Hmm.
Canadian reference for all you Canadians out there. Yeah. Oh, we went to I visited Drumheller as well, which is the land of Nickelback, of course, or the home of Nickelback. Um,
Ah, yes.
yes. You either love or hate Nickelback.
It's funny that you say that because I'm in the strange minority that doesn't seem to fit into either. Because I don't love or hate them. They're just a band.
Right, yeah, that's fair.
And the big thing, especially when they were super famous, a lot of the people who were sort of unfairly judging them were judging them as a rock band. But I was like, they're not a rock band. Like, listen to Chad Kroger's vocals and ignore the drums for a minute, because the drums sound like rock and roll drums. But if you just listen to him sing, that's country music. So if you think of them as like a pop country music band, then all of a sudden it's like everything makes sense. And it's like, why hate them? If you don't like country music, just don't listen to Nickelback. Like they're just the biggest one at the time. Like
And yeah, I also visiting Drumheller and going through Alberta and exploring that province. It makes a lot of sense because that's also a very country
Oh yeah.
part of Canada.
Yeah.
You know, I've been to Calgary. You know, I've explored a lot of that, and yeah, I've also been to like Medicine Hat and seen some ranches and stuff like that. So yeah, that is also a very country area, which makes sense why Nickelback, you would call them a country band more than a rock band,
Oh
which
yeah.
makes a lot more sense. You are Canadian. I would be horrific if I didn't ask this question. Do you have an NHL Stanley Cup way too early prediction winner?
I'm going to disappoint any other Canadians that happen to listen to this, which is just my admission that I don't follow hockey. I watch it sometimes
That's fair.
because I have family members who are into it, but I don't follow hockey. The only sport that I actively follow is MMA, and also like professional grappling leagues as well.
Who's your favorite
Because like
MMA fighter at the moment then?
currently, who's still active?
I can't always.
Probably.
I quite like the Irish lad just because he's funny. I don't know what his name is.
Wait,
Is he Irish or Scouse? Paddy? Is it Paddy?
oh, Paddy Pimblett. Yeah. He's a Scouser. Yeah.
Yes. So he's funny
Yeah.
to me, which is why I
He
like him.
is. He's a bit of a whiner, so I don't root for him all the time, even though like, he's entertaining. It's just when you hear him on podcasts, he's a whiner, and I don't like that.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't stop me from watching his fights, but but probably my favorite active fighter right now is Max Holloway.
Right.
Because he fights in like the lightweight.
Is he a floor guy or is he a boxer?
So he can fight on the ground, but he's a very, very, very technical striker.
Okay.
I mean, he'll also just throw down. Like every once in a while, he'll just put his hands down, scream at the guy, and then they just start swinging. But for the rest of the fight, he's very technical and just picks people apart, which is fun to watch.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on. I've kept you for near an hour, so I'm sure I'm going to let you go. You've got a busy day ahead of you. You've already had a lot to do already.
Yes, I suppose I should work.
Yes. Is there anything you would like to plug or shout out or anything very quickly?
I mean, check out NLT's new game. That's where you're going to see most of my stuff.
And that is that for this one. Thank you again to Ramsey Sheep. It was a wonderful interview. Thank you for sparing your time with me. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next one. Hit like, hit subscribe, and peace out.